The Thaumaturge's guild is run by 5 siblings. The eldest is Kokobuki, the guildmaster, then Kokobigo, Kokobani, Kokobetsi, and Kokoboha. Though, do not ask the receptionist Yayake to point out whom they would be, as she gets them easily confused. After making his acquaintance with Kokobuki the guildmaster, the adventurer is set off to their first trial. After all, you can't be expected to unleash devastation of the highest magnitude without a little bit of practice. First, you need to terrorize the hornets, shrews, and star marmots that deign to live on the outskirts of Thanalan. The purpose of this trial is to measure ether levels, as magical manipulation uses the ether, the life essence, that exists within all creatures. With ether levels deemed sufficient, a new trial awaits, and a little bit of lecture from each of the fellow brothers of the guild.
Ha! How magnificent the potent power we wield! Roaring flames, piercing eyes, and shocking bolts are matched not by fist or sword or spear, but the burly warrior waxes fearsome with every closing step. Fists shatter bone, blades slide through flesh, spears puncture soft bellies. Know you this threat, and stand you apart from such men.
So read Kokobigo, the brother of the guild most averse to close combat. Indeed a lesson about the dangers of close-range combat for those following the arcane arts. But every lesson must bear an exam, and a new trial awaits within Western Thanalan. One to bait a vulture from a comfortable distance using a piece of dried fish, and then lay waste to the unsuspecting creature. The victimized poultry was then provided to Fafafono, a merchant of the Silver Bazaar, but it just so happens a nearby alchemist overheard. Upon hearing the news that the adventurer had completed a Thaumaturge trial, the alchemist became quite upset, and fled while lamenting his brothers. But who could those be? The adventurer returns to share tales of his latest trial. However, as the brothers of the Thaumaturge's guild revel in the better fortunes of casting from afar, the alchemist bursts in.
You promised you would teach me next.
It does seem that the alchemist from before was none other than the 6th and youngest brother, Kokobusi, whose etheric levels are unfortunately not strong enough to support thaumaturgy. Despite joining the alchemist guild, his heart's desire remains to join his brothers. Such is Kokobusi's determination that he spends all his waking moments experimenting with alchemical concoctions, seeking a method by which he can expand his capacity for arcane manipulation. Sadly, there is not much that can be done about this, and the trials must continue. This time, the lesson comes from Kokobani, the 3rd eldest brother.
Ha! How magnificent the ruthless power we wield! Flame devours, ice entombs, and lightning courses through the stricken bodies of our foes. But oh, such desperation when the wellspring runs dry. Flame sputters out, ice melts into slush, and lightning sparks no longer. Know you this threat, and mind you the limits of your mortal vessel.
Indeed, ether can be aspected in 2 directions, astrally or umbrally, and it is the Thaumaturge's way to balance that ether between fire and ice phases. After another successful trial decimating poor creatures in their own habitat, the adventurer returns to Kokobani and learns that an Amaja raiding party attacked a trade caravan and made off with an entire craft of precious ether potions. And of course, who else but the fledgling Thaumaturge would be better suited to take on these bandits and retrieve the stolen cargo? Once the bandits were taken care of, the adventurer returns with the stolen bounty as well as some vials of Amaja blood, which had also been requested. Kokobuki, the guildmaster, summoned their dear youngest alchemist brother Kokobusi to return, but not to train in the art of thaumaturgy. Rather, he wishes Kokobusi to use his talents to produce a mana-amplifying elixir. However, the young alchemist takes slight to that, seeing it as a ruse to keep him away from thaumaturgy yet again. With the adventurer now being far more experienced, came a new lesson.
Ha! How magnificent the intimidating power we wield! Flames sear the air, ice frosts the ground, and lightning flashes with blinding incandescence. But not all are cowed by our elemental fury. Ignite not your flames, summon not your ice, and strike not with your lightning. Know you this threat, and stay your hand against such foes.
In short, do not engage against opponents you are unsure to defeat. After a little side task to please the merchants, as it turned out the Thaumaturge Guild had used up all the ethers from the stolen crate instead of returning them to the affected merchants, Kokobetsi let you know of a far more important task. A team of scholars requested assistance in destroying a cursed relic known as Mormu's Urn. which has been stolen by an organization of criminals known as the Alacran. Upon locating those bandits within Eastern Thanalan, the adventurer located the urn. Suddenly, Kukubusi appears. It seems he had followed the adventurer on his task. However, the two were interrupted by more Alacran criminals. The adventurer and Kukubusi fought them. While the adventurer certainly did the most damage, Kukubusi did not cower. He assisted fearlessly in fighting off the bandits as best as he could with his alembic, and offered salves to heal the adventurer's wounds during battle. With the criminals taken care of, the attention was turned to the urn, and Kukubusi had a simple request, that he be the one to destroy it. He hoped this would prove his competence to his brothers, especially as, despite his successful attempt at creating a mana-amplifying elixir, the results were not strong enough to make a difference for his own etheric aptitude. However, a voice came from within the urn. It was the void-sent Mormo. But she was not an evil void-sent, she declared. Oh no, she was a nice void-sent, and was wrongfully imprisoned by evil void-sent. Surely, if someone were to free her, she could grant them a wish to thank them. A wish. For Kukubusi, it would be to have etheric power as good as his brothers. And Mormo acquiesced it was something she could provide. Kukubusi could not resist the lying void-sent's sweet words, and opened the urn instead of destroying it, allowing Mormo's spirit to enter his body. Kukubusi, now controlled by Mormo, pretended that nothing happened, and destroyed the now empty urn, ready to return to the city without the adventurer noticing a change in behavior. Upon his return to the Thaumaturge's guild, the adventurer recounted his tale to the brothers, who were quick to point out the danger Kukubusi put himself in. A few days passed while the fledgling adventurer went to further practice the arcane arts, and upon his return to the guild, Kukubuki the guildmaster apprised him of a drastic new development, a recent spree of gruesome killings within Ul'dah, each involving at least one Thaumaturge, every corpse bloody, battered, and utterly drained of etheric energy. Of course, it's up to the adventurer to investigate, but only after another valuable lesson, this time from Kokoboha.
Ha! How magnificent and daunting power we wield! Flames pursue, ice transfixes, and lightning dances into the ranks of our enemies. But what terror descends when, from all sides, those ranks close? Flames are smothered, ice crushed, and lightning grounded. Know you this threat, and wear you the multitudinous foe.
How fitting, of course. Given the unknown aspect of this murderer, it is not possible to know if there are actually many. It would be foolish to venture alone, and thus the value of locating some companions to assist you. Kukubusi interrupted, suggesting that he too assist the adventurer in investigating the murder. Naturally, the Thaumaturge brothers disagreed, as it would be too dangerous, but Kukubusi anticipated as such and already arranged for a warrior to escort. Without giving them much of a chance to disagree, Kukubusi egged the adventurer to start on their new task right away, and the surprise of his eldest brother, Kukubuki. The adventurer and the hired warrior located the recent slayings of Thaumaturges, and after some investigation, located a soul-sucker imp, which was handily slayed. With the task seemingly done, the stalwart swordsman collected his guild and left the group. However, when the adventurer met up with Kukubusi, it seems that one of the imps had escaped, and it was suggested to give chase despite no longer having the hired hand. The adventurer obliged and went to investigate where the imp allegedly was, only for Kukubusi to attack him from behind. This was however thwarted by Kukubuki, who seemingly appeared from out of nowhere and cast a spell to push away the knife. He had sensed the strange behavior and etheric energy of his younger brother and followed them. Indeed, this had been a trap set by Mormo to attempt to steal the etheric energy of the adventurer. Mormo was not deterred, however, poking fun at Kukubuki for not having the courage needed to slay her, in fear that it would kill his little brother. And using the opportunity to make her escape, Kukubuki had to reflect upon his own teachings, as it was the Thaumaturge way to take the option with the most minimal risk, which would have been to slay Mormo and his own brother, while he had the element of surprise. His hesitance now meant they would need to wait for Mormo to strike again to relocate her. After some thought, Kukubuki decided it might be best to speak with the scholars researching Mormo to begin with. The adventurer located the band of 3 scholars within Camp Tribone and was able to acquire their knowledge and bring it back.
The histories unearthed in the ruins of Sildi depict the suffering wrought by a singularly powerful voidsent, the cunning and terrible seductress known as Mormo. With genius born of desperation, the mages of the now fallen city fashioned an urn that would drain and imprison the etheric vitality of any creature that laid a hand or claw upon it. Mormo, believing she was receiving a gift of appeasement from the beleaguered citizens, found her very essence drawn forth and trapped within the ensorcelled pot. Over the course of several centuries, the captive etheric energy was intended to weaken and dissipate, allowing any surviving descendants to safely shatter the urn and thus destroy Mormo's enervated spirit. The pot's lid was never to be opened again. To do so would release the ravenous voidsent, freeing her soul to enslave the nearest mortal vessel. As possession of this nature is irreversible, the only mercy afforded such a host should be a swift and decisive demise.
While the other brothers saw this passage as yet another proof that they would need to do the unthinkable to their littlest brother, Kokobuki did come to a different conclusion. The etheric suppression of the pod explains why the voidsent had been preying on thaumaturges to restore etheric power, which means there was another way, a riskier way, that could possibly save Kokobushi. The others were shocked, as the teachings of the Thaumaturge's Guild were all about preventing unnecessary risk, which included any enemies that they were not guaranteed to defeat. The plan was simple: convince Mormo to give up Kokobushi's body by taking another. And how could she resist the etheric power that lay within the guildmaster himself? This would put him in grave danger, while also powering up the voidsent considerably. But with enough etheric energy, she would be able to regain her true form and no longer need to possess bodies. For the other thaumaturges, this was a reckless plan, but Kokobuki realized it was about time for them all to learn a little bit of courage. And who better to teach them about courage than the adventurer who had been willing to take on the trials and anything else in his way without much regard for calculating risks. And thus did they all go to Eastern Thanalan to undertake the last trial, a cave in which the void spills into the realm. Various voidsent appeared for the adventurer to take on, as the thaumaturges of the guild watched without assistance. Beast after beast was felled by the adventurer until the last voidsent, the Lord of Flaws, came over the void gate. Having borne witness to a display of fearless thaumaturgy, the various brothers realized that it was through bravery and courage that they must wield their own powers to take on greater foes, which would come in handy when Kokobushi was finally spotted at Vesper Bay. After questioning the residents there, came the conclusion that Kokobushi had indeed been nearby, hiring adventurers including a thaumaturge and a marauder, and romancing nearby maidens. It could only mean that Mormo's intention was to drain the adventurers of ether and take over the body of one of the maidens that had the misfortune of following her. No time could be wasted. Searching frantically, they were able to locate the marauder, who had been injured but not killed. After providing information on Mormo's whereabouts, the marauder stayed behind as the group pursued Mormo and encountered her, still within Kokobushi's body. In the process of draining the thaumaturge, Kokobuki proceeded with the plan, and Mormo could not pass up a chance to drain his ether. She freed Kokobushi and drained Kokobuki's ether, enough to finally regain her demonic form. It was now time to enact the second part of the plan, taking her down. Although cowering in absolute fear, and despite now being down one person as Kokobuki laid unconscious after being drained of his ether, the remaining Thaumaturge brothers assisted the adventurer in taking Mormo down, with Kokobigo using his awesome power to lead the pack. Steadfast was their resolve, even as Mormo summoned minions forth from the void to increase her numbers as the battle went on, and thus did they defeat Mormo, removing her evil once and for all. They could now finally attend to their 2 brothers, and see that Kokobushi quickly woke up from his possession. However, Kokobuki remained in critical condition, as he barely had enough etheric energy left to remain alive. Thankfully, Kokobushi did still have that mana-amplifying potion in his pocket somewhere, and although the potion was not able to help him gain the etheric power he wished to have, it could be enough to raise his fallen brother's etheric levels enough to prevent an untimely demise. And thus was Kokobuki saved. The Thaumaturge brothers realized their teachings did not need to stay within the confines of extreme safety, and Kukubushi finally realized that through alchemy he could provide assistance to his brothers despite his lack of talent in Thaumaturge. The end. I do hope you enjoyed this storytelling of the Thaumaturge questline. This is easily one of my favorite class and job questlines. It is a tale of belonging, bravery, and self-confidence. I especially love the contrast between the brothers. Although the Thaumaturges wield this great power, they are too afraid to use it for anything except relatively weak beasts, because of their own teachings. Meanwhile, Kukubushi, despite being magically weak, was willing to follow and partake in battle without any fear, and actually made it out of the battle unscathed. Indeed, it was only his desire for belonging that caused him to falter after the battle was over. Still, for all their cowardice, the Thaumaturge brothers, especially Kukubuki the guildmaster, did greatly care for their little brother and actually did give him some sage advice. After all, it was Kukubuki who suggested that Kukubushi could be useful for their thaumaturgy through the use of potions, but little Bushi saw that as a ruse rather than accepting that his own talent as an alchemist would be just as important as the talents of his brothers. But yeah, with that small analysis completed, I do believe that marks the end of this A Realm Abridged storytelling. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, do make sure to hit that like button, and if you haven't done so already, please subscribe to the channel. Also, be sure to let me know what this class quest means to you in the comments, and if there are any stories you would like me to cover next. A big thanks to all of you for joining me down memory lane within the world of Final Fantasy XIV. My name is Squintina, and I hope to see you all again soon for more Final Fantasy XIV story. Do feel free to share this around to the people you know who love this game just as much as we do.